good afternoon. I think for most of us it's afternoon, right? You're Europe-based, right? So very good afternoon from our side. Thank you for your nice introduction. And yeah, my name is Viesturs, and don't bother to pronounce it. My parents were not particularly considerate for foreigners, so that's not what you should be mastering. So yeah, I've been around for the startup ecosystem in one way or other for over 20 years now, and built out my own companies and some like startups, and sold some, and some of them went down the drain with flying colors, and lots of other things in between. Run a very like a boutique, very early investment fund, and also invested myself and all that stuff. Now, currently, I'm working with startup programs all over the Europe, and not only Europe, and design them, run them, sometimes visit them as yours here. One thing before I go, that's not much of me. One thing is, first of all, I would really appreciate that your cameras are switched on for most of the time. It's a default in my world, because I clearly understand that there are very intimate things going on. Sometimes you don't want to share. However, thank you, Václav and Jason and everyone else listening to me, because I really understand sometimes you should need to switch it off, but for me it's super helpful if you keep them on. That's number one. Secondly, second rule of the game of the house today is that please always ask me questions immediately. You can do it either writing something in chat, I'm checking it, or you can raise your little digital hand and shoot from the hip by asking that question because I believe that the questions need to be asked when they arise, not politely waiting for a few hours until I finish. That's the second thing. The third thing is that I really like that you also, because you definitely are people with some experience, so I believe that you also can share views and argue if needed, or add or something, so that everything of that sort of a thing is very welcome here. I'm super happy to have a justified and grounded argument with some of you. That's the third thing. What else? I hope, let's see, I haven't metered this one because it was pretty ad hoc, like the inquiry to talk specifically about the revenue models, but let's see where we go with it. I hope to finish in about 1.5 hours, and then we can have the floor for questions if needed. And if I need to depart and you want me to depart slightly sideways into some other topics related, then feel free to trigger me into that. But this is from my side. And the last thing, but not least thing, my slide deck will also be available to you. I will send it to Madara, and I hope she will distribute it further. So just in case you would like to have it with you, you will have the possibility. Okay, good. Question from my side. I really very much appreciate understanding who are you, and I've been sort of told a little bit about the program, but I would like to understand it myself. So just raise your and let's say exercise our digital hand raising. So please raise the hand, those of you who are working on some startup idea or something within a team or alone. Can you? Okay, Eva is, Natalie, Jason, Felix, that little. Walter is applauding. Elena is giving thumbs up. Let's take it that the applause of Walter means that that was the hand raised. Maybe he's applauding himself for being brave enough working on the project, which is great. Thank you. Please lower the hand, unless you want to ask something. Okay, you don't. Wonderful. Now, and who are then? What are the ones are among you? Are somebody who is not yet working on idea, but is around just for a general, either joining other team or a general understanding how the startups work and how the things work in this life. Anyone who's not exactly with any particular idea, but is interested in a subject domain for some other reason. Okay, not that many. So who are the other ones then? Can anyone tell me?
Yeah, so for example, me, so I'm from the University of Applied Sciences. I'm from the organizational team. I'm from the startup center from the University of Applied Science.
Okay, wonderful. So you're also some sort of organizers, some program people here. Okay,
Yeah, yeah.
understood.
Same with me. Same with me. I'm from Czech University, so yeah.
Yeah, right. Understood. So quite a few. There's half the program people and half the participants.
I think some of the participants didn't raise the hand
Yeah,
because
because
I
they're
can see
busy.
that there are teams who just didn't raise the hand.
Yeah, they're busy with other things. Okay, certainly. So that's good that the participants are more than the organizers. Otherwise, it reminds me of an old joke. Remember this cartoon about the amount of Indian chiefs are exceeding the amount of Indians or something like that. Okay, good. Let's move on and let's start talking about the subject I wanted to share with you, and hopefully you'll take some maybe ideas out of it. Okay. Give me a sign that you currently start seeing something that is resembling an ugly slide. Yeah, okay, good. Very good. All right, yeah. Let's talk about the matter of a revenue model. And what is that for Viesturs? That's kind of intuitively you can deduct. But what are the things you probably should be knowing about it, or maybe some ideas where to move? So for today, I plan to talk about, first of all, general. I believe some people have talked about that like multiple times with you, but I want to emphasize just an idea of this scalability thing and what an impact it has on your maybe even strategy and tactics of building products. Then I would talk about those popular, and this is my selection. This is not a full list, and you can find some yourselves, but I would talk about some things I have come across and seen in action, how you actually monetize the usage, aka how you generate revenues. Then I talk a little bit, touch upon how you can decide whether, depending on your product and some other things, how you can decide what the revenue models are for you and what are not. Then I promise talking a little bit about pricing, because it's kind of constituent of it's not a revenue model itself, but if we look on the revenue streams in more broader sense, it's model plus what's the price point, how exactly you price and what are probably some ideas out of it, and how you test them. Okay, the revenue model, including the price. That's my plan for today. I would start. I know that asking you guys questions is the easiest way how to get your hatred immediately, because you're here to listen, not to answer my silly questions. But if someone would be that brave, either raise hand and say, or write in a chat, equally okay. What, in your own words, what's the business model? Even not the revenue model, but what's the business model? All the ideas are correct ones. Anyone? You're writing nation, not talking nation. Okay. Good with me. Yes, Valentina.
Yes, hello.
Hey.
For me, business model is something that can help make, for example, the template of the startup that we are making. And also it can help find, for example, our clients, the place where we could just make our startup. or something like that,
Okay.
just to improve our idea.
Some sort of a template of a plan, right?
Yes.
A template. Okay, template is a specific part, but okay, a plan. Moritz wrote something that generates revenues by providing a solution. Wonderful. A great shot. Anyone else has it? Okay.
A cohesive plan.
Say it again.
A cohesive plan.
Plan. Okay. Cohesive plan. Detailed one. Or maybe not that detailed. All right. Basically, there is this definition, the formal one. This is indeed a plan or representation how an organization creates or is going to create value. But this is kind of very formal thing to me. And I'm simplifying things down. Because basically, and I'm quite close to what Moritz was, the business model is the way an organization is generating or will generate, provided it's a hypothetical one, if you're not having a paying customer or customers. How it's generating or will generate revenues. Mind it, not the profit, but revenues. Exactly like Moritz was put. Like pointing out. Because it's important for you to generate revenues. The plan is a accounting item, the profit is an accounting item, okay? It's not like the profit is not important, but you first of all, you have to prove that someone is going to open the wallet in front of you and pay you something for whatever product or service you're building, okay? Hope it makes sense in that sense. Right, and the revenue model is in a narrower sense exactly the monetization method. So the business model is everything you are supposed to do in order to generate those revenues. And the revenue model is how exactly you monetize the usage or are going to monetize the usage of your product and service. Okay? Are you with me? Give me a sign. So this is for definition. I hate definitions, but sometimes we need to agree upon something to just call the things the same way. Call things same words. Use the same word. But there in this definition of the business model, there are two important, 1.5 important words. You, as an organization, as a startup for the matter, as a small company, not necessarily, I don't know, but maybe you're not exactly all are into the startup building. There might not all the young organizations are startups. We'll talk about that in a second. You need to generate those revenues repeatably. So basically, it's if two friends of the Facebook and your grandma buys a product and service, it's most likely not enough for you to survive and to sustain your business model in the future. And in those brackets, you're supposed to do it scalably. Now, I would like to talk a little bit about the concept of scalability, which is, I believe, quite important. Maybe some of you have already touched upon that, and some has told you that. But for the sake, I want to repeat it because we also will be talking about the revenue models from the perspective of their scalability. Now, not all businesses are born equal. There are huge difference between distinctively, and this is. Please consider this not a black and white thing. These are just extremes of some ruler, of some continuum, right? There could be all the variations in between. But basically on the extremes of that ruler, there is linear business models. And on the other one are scalable business models. So what does that mean? So you can generate revenues in a linear way, or you can generate those revenues in a very, very scalable way, or to an extent scalable way. Linear business models have two features. Let's assume that my ugly drawings mean that on the horizontal axis there is time, and on the vertical axis there is plenty of something. Let's say net profit, okay? just for interpretation purposes. Now, in a linear business model case, there are two features of this business model which typically are combined. They come hand in hand. The first, you are close. Liana, your mic is not muted. Just okay, Liana disappeared. Sorry for that. So the first thing, you are close to the market. So basically, with your product or service, you can have paying customers tomorrow. It implies maybe making something, but not much of a research development and creating something from scratch. Think of a bakery. Basically, you can have the customers for your world's most tastiest cinnamon buns tomorrow, right? You just need to prepare, the yeast and dough and start the oven going and bake them. So you don't have the development risk. You can test your offering, you can test your product or service with the market immediately or almost immediately. Okay? So that's why if you're doing something right, then this bluish line starts raising. You have eventually more and more you do, the more some sort of revenue or net profit in this case you're earning. But it has the second characteristics, and this is the linearity of it. And what the linearity means, it means like in extreme case, like I'm depicting it here, each next sale of your product or service, each next unit has the same amount of costs associated. So you can grow linearly. So in my case with cinnamon buns, if you bake 200 instead of 100, it's quite a close to doubling the expense, okay? Each next sale of your product or service incurs the amount, roughly the same amount of the expense, of the variable, aka direct, aka manufacturing production expense. Are you with me? The logics, okay? So which means that even if you're doing something everybody needs, you can't be 10,000 times bigger next month. You can't explode because that linearity of your expense, that linearity of your business model is holding you back. Okay? Okay. So you have, of course, a market adoption risk, but you can test it quickly and you're not having a development risk. There is not that much of a risk of doing something that they might not need and you find it out way later. That's the linearity. Now the opposite situation, scalable business models. Yeah, the horizontal axis is at time, Moritz, if I understand what you. Yeah, well, yeah, you mean if it will doubles also the time? Probably not. You can upgrade your, I don't know. You can have it twice as big oven. This is principle. Time is not the time. Time is a function of your accumulated growth. It's not a function of your like direct revenues. If we go into detail, but now let's move to the this scalability idea, and the scalable business models have exactly the opposite pair of features. The extremely scalable. First feature, you need to prepare something. Design, code, write the code, solder, whatever, plant for the reason. So you can't sell it, whatever you are going to sell, you can't sell it tomorrow. Okay? Why? Because you have to develop something. You have a development risk. And the further you are away from market, the bigger is the risk of building something that no one needs. Welcome to the startup world. Probably the single biggest reason why they fail is that they're spending their like precious time and resources on doing that someone might not need. Now, but the second feature of that, so their risk is multiplied. Okay, there's not only the market adoption risk, but multiplied by this development risk, the risk that you're building something that they might not appreciate, they might pay for it. But then there is the second feature, and this is the definition of scalability. And definition of scalability of the business model goes like this: that each next unit of your sales does not have any additional direct, aka variable, aka production cost. So in other words, whether you tomorrow sell 1,000 of something or 10,000 or 100,000 of something, there is literally no difference in your direct cost. Okay, that is scalability, and that is how it differentiates from growth. Because you can grow, you can grow also extensively, just become bigger, but that's basically still quite linear. Okay, so in theory, and this is a representative example that it can happen, you're actually, in terms of your profits, you are first spend money and then hope to recover it when you hit the target with something they everyone needs. Okay, are you with me on this? Okay, good. Some are nodding, like not very convincingly. So it's basically the idea is that actually the one is much riskier business and as the first one, but it's if you hit like the bullseye, it's way much more rewarding, because in theory you can scale, you can be 1,000 times bigger next month. Typical examples: digital products, obviously. You can think of Angry Birds. I'm not sure you're from the generation who used to play Angry Birds on their mobile device, but there is not much. They made a game, a mobile game, and there's not much difference whether someone makes enough purchases, of exploding stones to have a better chance of killing those pigs or whatever they were killing. And there's no difference whether 100 people buy those exploding stones in app or 100,000 people buy. Okay, good. Now, the thing what I want you to probably consider and remember building your products or services is that actually, like I said, it's a continuum. In one end, it's very, very linear businesses or business models, and the other end is scalable. Now, startups are young companies with sufficiently scalable business model. So the bakery is not a startup, in case you wonder. So you have to have certain, not extreme, not fully like the most scalable thing, but some sort of scalability in your business model to be qualified as well. So it's some sort of a risk and an upside there, in order to be investable and that stuff, but I'm not touching it. The thing I want to, you currently go like, okay, we're doomed. If we're a physical product, we're linear. If we're digital, we're scalable only then, and what to do. My point here is that I want to emphasize that actually you have quite a lot, not like fully like 100%, but quite a lot of strategic decision-making power of how scalable or linear you want to be. Because maybe you don't tolerate the high risks. So you deliberately try being linear when starting the business. And this is also can change within time. Or if you want, you know, really to build a startup, you can tolerate risk. You can actually run the risk of like succeeding every 10th time or whatever they say there. You can go for very, very scalable business models. This implies, and then we go also to revenue models from there. This implies also the mindset of what you want to build. Some people want to build bakeries, and some people want to build the next Facebooks, and those are actually very different types of people. To an extent, both entrepreneurial, though very, very different strategies. The thing I wanted to actually emphasize to you guys is that you actually can move on that ruler and decide it. For example, if you're a bakery, and of course, if you're a like very small niche type of bakery of cinnamon buns, you're very, very linear, right? You agree? You're very much to the left-hand side, okay? Any ideas how you can move to the middle? How you can scale the business model of a bakery? A bit more. Anyone? Tired people?
New products.
Say it again?
New products.
Okay,
Like-
but if they're bakeries and croissants, if they're cinnamon buns and croissants and whatnot, it's still like the same. You can have some efficiencies of scope, maybe. I agree, but just a tiny thing. Valentina.
The first thing that came up into my mind is maybe marginal cost. For example, it makes sense for bakeries because if we have one oven, for example, and we have like three people who make the food, and we will pay them their salary, so we will just
So
make the revenue less than we'll pay them the salary. So we'll have the biggest cost.
I'm not to be honest, sorry, I'm not quite following. If you say that you're utilizing the resources better, that was Luis was saying. He was saying that you utilize the resources by introducing new products. Okay, automating. Moritz says automating. Indeed, you can expand. You can, and this is a good point. Automation always is scaling because you replace the manual labor, which is direct cost, variable cost, with some fixed cost, which is automation. Yeah. Also, you can expand, you can do more, you can automate. This is all good. But there was an interesting answer from Walter earlier on. Franchising. Yeah, you can also B2B. You can sell to supermarket chains. Franchising. Franchising is a good way how to scale, because you, instead of incurring this variable cost, you can just teach all the others that the world's best cinnamon bun recipe, and take, I don't know, a franchise fee from them for allowing to do that. And that's how you actually reduce the cost of doing it over and over with a variable cost again and again. That's quite a good one. You can, by franchising for physical products, for example, or even services as well, you can actually scale it quite high up, like in 2/3 of like in relative. If you want to scale it more, you can publish a digital recipe book on the internet, and to charge 10 euros for everyone who's downloading your world's most tastiest cinnamon bun recipe. It might not be very lucrative business to sell recipes on the internet, but it's not about the bigger revenues. It's about avoiding repeatable costs, because in franchise you also, like, once a year you have the quality check and I don't know, educate and give new recipes to your franchisees or something. The point being, what I'm trying to make here is that actually you have the opportunity to decide what kind of scalability you can have to your cinnamon bun business. The same goes for services. I'm currently rendering you what is called a educational service, right? I'm spending this afternoon with you on in this workshop. I'm not scalable because I can't be anywhere else, and my time is my expense. This is super linear. But if I would probably open this to thousands of people and I advertise it thousands of people on internet and charge €5 for attending, it might be more scalable. I will reach out to bigger audience, and I would have to redesign my content, so I'm moving it away from the market, right? So all the logic remains in order to do that. Or even I can record it. I can like hire a studio, powder my nose not to reflect and record my course on revenue streams. And then again, I can sit back home and drink my beer and see how many people are signing up and buying my course. Again, it's not the big revenue thing. Maybe running one single workshop with you is much more like feasible for me. However, I just wanted to make a point that you are not locked with whatever you're doing. You're not locked into some sort of a scalability element. The same with digital products. If it's subscription-based or platform products, they're super scalable. But you can deliberately decide building more sophisticated products, which needs, onboarding and educating your customers, and all the customer service scales badly. So eventually you're downscaling. You can go also other direction, or you can just end up in rendering IT services for others, which is relatively very, very linear business model, right? Even sometimes pays well, but it's linear by definition. So here I try to make the point with you guys that this is often your choices, how scalable you would like to be and how scalable you are plan being because of your personal risk tolerance preferences and many other things. Are you with me on this? Just show that you're following what I tried to convey. Now, thank you, Natalie. Now, what it has to do with revenue streams, very direct thing. One of the ways how you can scale or descale, there are a couple of other elements of scaling, like for example, channel, if you're selling on internet, or if you're selling on the high street boutique store and everything. But basically one thing which you definitely should consider in defining and strategic planning of your scalability of your business model is revenue streams, revenue generation. So let's move to that. So once again, the revenue model, I'm not torturing you with that like definition. The business model is how you generally build the system of making revenues. The revenue model, how is exactly that usage of your solution, be it a product, a service, how you can monetize. Basically, boiling down to 3 questions. Who pays, how much they pay, and how frequently they pay. Sometimes the users and the payers are not the same. I think you have experienced that already. Sometimes some people use, like Google search, and some people pay for it. Advertisers. Sometimes in other social business models, some people pay for the services rendered or products given to others. How much is the next question? So what's the price point? And how frequently? What is the pattern of payment? Is it like happens at a given time? Is it happens because of the other trigger? It's a transaction when you receive something, etc., etc. Those all considerations can be very, very different depending on what you build. Again, this is my list of 10, I believe, 10 or 11, yeah, 10 popular revenue models. And I'll touch upon them in more detail now. There is lots of things that you need easily, if you scan through the list, you can easily see that there is a very different ones. Something that you incur once or a few times during your kind of custom life as a customer or during your customer's life. And some which you do regularly, and some are weird things altogether. And those revenue models are different in a sense of their or in a potential of their scalability. This again is a very probably like a very superficial concept, but I'll try to explain. Some business models are typically associated with linear businesses, and they basically, because of the cost nature, they stay as being linear business. Probably the most linear business is this one-time fees, onboarding fees. Something that you, I don't know, educate your customers, they're closing the deal and something, and then you can charge for them becoming your customer. So they pay once when they start using it, even not like some sort of interaction with your product, but once they start using it. It's classically B2B situations often, but most importantly, because they're so linear, because they're incurring lots of effort and lots of cost relative. It's not necessarily they are at a loss, they can be at a big profit, but still they're very much involve your kind of activity as a company, as a service or product provider. They're typically combined with some other revenue streams. This is a very typical combination that, for example, and I'll get back to the derivatives in a second. You buy, some gadget, and then you subscribe for the data that sensor is providing you. I think some of you have experienced that. Okay, so this is that type of a service. This type of revenue. Then there is probably the most classical and oldest revenue model is transactional revenue model, aka paper item. So I'm basically buying a bottle of milk, and I pay for it right away. There's no subscription to the milk. They could be though. Think of it. But there has been actually in some countries around the world has been subscription models for milk in the past. But basically nowadays I go to a store or whatever and pay per item. The same as pay per use or pay per service, very logical. And there is sort of overlap of those because you can pay per given service is more a paper item, like for example having a haircut, and pay per use is more of a hourly based, maybe some other variations there. So for example, I'm advising companies and I'm charging X amount of euros per hour. This is pay per use. If they don't use my services, they don't pay. If they use my services, I bill them by hour. Professional services, exactly, that's how they operate. The same logics pay per use and maybe pay per item, depends on what is exactly the object of the purchase, is also can happen also in a digital world. Like mentioned in-app purchases. You can actually, if you buy, you're not paying it regardless of whether you haven't bought it or not, but you buy it you pay it when you buy something. And there is a very weird to extent, but quite also important category of revenue streams or revenue model, which is donations and subsidies. They're one-off most of the times. Donations could be recurrent though. Used for lots of social business models and everything. I would say that in order to sustain those models, and that's why the social entrepreneurship is so difficult to pull off, because they have very complicated monetization strategies typically. But basically, this is also could be regarded as a business model, because that's the way how you generate revenues, right? That's the way how you monetize. You offer something to someone, and by the very virtue, by the very fact that someone has paid you for enabling you to do that. So I would say that in real life situation, this is relatively rarely as a standalone model. It is supplemented or somehow linked to maybe some other revenue streams, which are more of a commercial nature. But that is still to emphasize that this scales poorly. Now, there is a something in between. Already pretty possibly scalable business, or revenue models, how you can monetize. You can share the profit. You can say that, okay, if I make something and you to your customer, and you have not a revenue increase, but like a provable increase in a gross profit, for example, you give me 20%. That is a relatively rare business, revenue model. Typical use cases are those sales agents, which could also be the revenue share, which is a bit more scalable. Typical thing is, if you have heard of this industry, ESCO companies. These are these companies that improve your energy efficiency, for example, in return to sharing your savings. In that case, not profits, but the inverse profits. The savings, for example, they insulate your home and don't take any money. And then for 5 years, you pay them difference between the previous heating bill and the heating bill, which is currently being paid by you. Also, fund managers and investment industry, they take money from their investors to invest directly into companies, and there's typically this so-called carry fee, that they take the money on the profit, not on the exit revenue, but the things they earned for their investors, for the limited partners they're taking themselves. Then there is some kind of a classical, because we sometimes think of commission as many other things, but this is classical commission, so-called affiliate revenues, meaning that you are actually paid for endorsing or bringing customers someone's way. You, for example, because of, I don't know, affiliate program, because of the link which is on your site, people click, and it's not ad based, it's slightly different. And if there is a proven transaction at the end where you pointing the potential customers of the third party to, then you are entitled to a commission. Okay. And then there's licensing / franchising fees. We spoke a bit about that. This is also, to an extent, like medium level scalable, because you then can generate the revenues without incurring direct costs, and they could be very different by their nature. So they can be either time bound, like you pay 100,000 euros a year, and then you have a right of to the license, or the right to use the brand, which is basically licensing of the brand, and the business model is called franchising. Or you can pay it also per use, or per also have some revenue sharing in it. So you have a kind of a basic payment then, but and then plus some percentage of whatever the franchisee is making revenues. That makes it even more scalable. And a list, not again a finite list, but a list of potentially very scalable revenue models is subscription, sometimes referred to as a recurring revenue model, because you have the product lying out there. And in most occasions, if you don't have lots of onboarding costs or educational costs or something like that, your direct, I'm not talking the marketing, I'm not talking all those indirect cost items, but your direct costs are very low. So basically, you're not having any production, manufacturing, direct cost, variable cost, if you wish. Whether 100 people subscribe to your service or your product, or 1,000 people. Okay, but there is also, as you remember this ugly picture I was showing in the beginning, the more scalable potential business models and thus the revenue models are, the further you are from the market. There is actually the threshold kind of entry by you really need to actually invest a lot into reaching that scale. Lots of fixed costs. In classical thing, and again, some of you might organically deduct it. If you have a subscription business model that the faster you grow, the more cash you bleed. Because you need first to some marketing cost to close a customer, then becoming a subscribing customer, okay? And you're recovering typically that cost of closing, cost of acquisition, as they say. You're recovering only with time because they're paying you every month or quarter or year or whatnot. So you actually having the costs immediately, and those revenues are coming. So that's a counterintuitive to most of the people, that the more successful you are, the faster you grow in a subscription business model, the more cash you need initially. Okay, good. I start losing you in terms of seeing you. All right, revenue share model. Revenue share model is also one of the potentially very scalable models. And this is, for example, you can think of platforms like Uber, Airbnb is this case, and everything, where basically they aggregate and they offer they sort of link the vendors, the offer to the demand to the customers, and they take 10, 20, 30, you name it, % for full transaction at the time of transaction. Super scalable, again, no direct cost that are doing that. It's even probably more scalable than a classical software subscription, but you need to really build the platform. It's not like if the platform is inactive and there are like 3 vendors and 5 customers, nothing is going to happen here, right? Plus, that also has a risk of not all platforms can be monetized as the revenue share. And if you're building the platforms, here's the hint. If you are building the platform which does not create a long-term, has no risk of creating a long-term relationship, for example, taxis or staying abroad in an Airbnb, right? If there is no risk of creating a longer-term relationship, that is monetizable easy through a revenue share, because deep down you don't care if the same taxi is carrying you around tomorrow than the one who was yesterday. Okay, so you're happy to go through the platform, book it on a platform, and drive it, or be driven, be taken. So this is not a big risk. That therefore all those ad hoc type of interaction, like a quicker service platforms, work well. However, if your platform has a risk of building a long-term relationship, think of nannies, think of house cleaners, then you're in trouble because you can't monetize it that way. Because if I found, you know, the best in the world nanny, the Mary Poppins for my child, the odds are I will never get back to your platform to book her, right? I will agree directly that she's around and when I need and take her phone number or whatnot. See what I'm trying to say? So if there is the risk of building relationship for a longer time where the customer appreciates the same vendor, the same service provider, providing the same service, then you most likely are just ending up figuring out maybe it's a subscription type of a model for nannies. So they are on your platform and that's the marketing channel and you take it, monetize them once a month for just being there for new customers. And then there is an ad-based revenue. Again, seemingly very interesting business or revenue model, but it's very hard, painful, and very bloody, to be honest. So it's basically you can if you have a digital representation of some sort of a, again, could be an app, platform, web app, mobile app, everything, that you basically can run the ads on your place, in your digital place, in physical actually. Also you can, if you have a firewall to put a banner on, this is basically the same thing. But again, it is scalable but requires huge critical mass and lots of usage. If you're a niche site, if you're a niche app, especially in the situations where your customers are not accustomed to pay for whatever similar services, it is very, very difficult to monetize. So ad-based revenues in my world are way more typical within the context of so-called secondary or derivative revenue models, which I'm speaking about in a second. So basically, it's a combination of ad-based with something else. Okay. Any questions at this point? Or are you good? You're good. Okay. Wonderful. Let's move on. Let's a little bit talk about those derived and combined revenue models. They sometimes are referred to as revenue models, but if you think for a while, in my world, they're not. Because they're a combination of anything we already discussed before, or maybe some other things, but they're not directly they're kind of a derivatives. One super classical digital product business model is so-called freemium. Freemium is a joint word of two words, free and premium. That's what it's called, freemium. Freemium is not the free part. Freemium is free plus premium, okay? Just for the terminology record. So basically, you have two tiers, or could be even multiple tiers, the different premium versions of your product. You allow them to use base version for free, but it has limited functionality or very difficult, relatively bad user experience and everything. And then you have premium version, where you take away all the burden, take away ads. You know it, right? What is the most successful freemium business model for at least from my perspective I could think of? It's Spotify. Spotify is a classical freemium model with a huge, extremely unprecedented conversion rate. About close, I don't know the last data, but the last time I googled it up, it was like 2 years ago, I believe. Almost 40%, like 36 or 35 of all the Spotify users were paying. That is unprecedentedly high. Typically, the percentage of the premium version of paying users from all the users is in a ballpark of 3 to 7%. This is a very average temperature in a word, but this is pretty much something around 4 or 5% is a typical one. So if you have 100 users, then you can expect that 4 or 5 of them are going to pay. The rest will be using this base version, the free ad-based version. But Spotify did it. And there is an interesting strategy how they did it. I think they made it, since they bet on this fact that there is a very limited ability to actually influence what order you're listening and everything of that on if you're on a free version, and they made the bet that you actually can if you're listening on a mobile device, you want a bigger control, and they wanted that. It was a risky bet, but they wanted that. On a web-based version, the Spotify is okay. As I haven't checked it lately, but it was quite okay to navigate and also to keep the eye on how you can organize your playlist. But on a mobile, it was impossible. And they made this risky bet, and they won, because most of people better pay for having a control of the playlist rather than not pay and then listen whatever comes up within a given category. So that's a freemium. Now there is a very famous business model called bait and hook, sometimes also referred to as a razor and blade. So its basic idea is that you are, and we discussed a little bit about this very early, the onboarding fees and whatever costs model. And the bait and hook is this, that you actually sell to them some sort of, and this could be not only like physical, could be combination of both physical and software. But the basic idea, you sell them something relatively cheaply, initially. Like, for example, sell them razor, and then keep supplementing disposable blades at a, with a healthy profit margin. And since the razors are made for those blades, as you have probably people have seen that this, you can't exactly interchange that much blades for razors, then you end up in locking in your customer for quite a long time, buying your supplements, buying your products. Another example, like a classical historical example, is Nespresso. Right? There is a coffee machine, and only one sort of those coffee, whatever, blisters are fitting there. And okay, there are of course copycats and all that stuff, but generally thinking you're actually earn not on a machine, you earn on the disposables, on the things you sell afterwards, just by locking your customer in. But this also can be a hardware-software combination, like, for example, IoT. That is the single most popular way how you can increase the scalability of your IoT products, that you actually give them or sell them the sensors, and then they subscribe for data for using those. We're not turning those sensors, for example, or some actuators, right? Heating or whatever, air quality, you can think of it. Not turning them back into the piece of metal. You just use them by paying and sharing those, not the sharing, but obtaining that value added through software. And there is a very rare, though, but the existing dynamic pricing model. So either it's fluctuating based on supply demand. Airline prices, airfare prices is a classical example here. And yes, if you have seen that it's actually cheaper, then it increases in the price, and sometimes sharply drops before the takeoff, because they want, every other airplane ticket they're selling is eventually a profit, gross profit, because they will fly anyway. Sometimes those are other like timed dynamics, like external circumstances. Some things are cheaper, you know, during night and during day and all that stuff. Think of energy. Okay, good. Now, I promised to talk a little bit how to choose those. And there are four kind of intervening considerations, and they're sometimes contradicting, sometimes supporting each other. The first one, tradition. If your customers are used to pay for a bread by piece, it will most likely be rather difficult making them subscribe for the bread. You can try doing that, but it would have a considerable effort. There should be other value differentiating factor there. So don't downplay this. Don't be, you know, too innovative with your revenue model, because tradition and convenience is a big idea. Because customers in this particular, and bread is a silly example, but in this particular industry, in this particular field, they are used to pay like that. So in terms, you can play with the price point, but in terms of the revenue model itself, you're quite locked into their perception of what they're supposed to pay and how they're supposed to pay. However, the other strategic consideration is directly contradicting the first. Sometimes you can use this revenue, and that's what I kind of hinted also when talking about the scalability continuum. Sometimes you can use the different on purpose, be different in your revenue model to differentiate. If there is makes sense and the value is added that way. The most famous example is $1 shave club. That was a long time ago. You might not remember that. It was like at least 15 years ago. So something. There were people in the US, of course, who started to sell blades, exactly the razor blade, but not like that exactly. They started to sell it as a subscription. So you paid, that's hence the $1 shave club. You paid it on a regular, I think it was week or month or something, depending on the frequency. You paid it, and they were appearing, you know, the new blades were appearing into your post box. And luckily the blades, it's even before all the shipment era and the door-to-door deliveries, the blades are quite easy to actually ship through the mail. So they were actually reinventing the business model through introducing the other revenue model. But it is not only the only thing you need to resegment that market. And they were very, very successful, later bought by Gillette, I believe, for over 1 billion euros. Dollars. They, of course, they needed to change also the channel. The channel was not the store or supermarket. The channel was door-to-door delivery and sales and delivery into the mailbox. So there is a logic behind that. They could choose to have a different revenue. So think within in respective business areas you're operating, think of whether you want to be different and prove the value in a different way. And if there are those resegmentation possibilities, and maybe some of them require or suggest a change of the on purpose, having a different revenue model that classically that industry has, that product has. One super important consideration of choosing the revenue model is pattern of usage, especially for digital products, but not only. So in other words, it's very difficult to make your customers subscribe for something if they will be using that service, I don't know, for example, some application, digital tool for self-assessment or something like once a year. Okay. The subscription model, recurring revenue models, they ask for relatively regular usage. If you're using it like infrequently, and moreover, if you use it not in a predictable way, if you would use it every year on November, you can still play around with annual subscriptions. But basically, if the pattern is not predictable, then most likely the people will be very reluctant subscribing for it. They will better go for pay-per-use. Okay, I hope it makes kind of sense, because the pattern is that, okay, I better pay for a given usage, because I don't know, maybe I need it to like next month or in 3 years from now. This is quite a powerful thing to think about. Try to mimic or try to play along with your revenue model, with your monetization model, the usage pattern. And I've seen many funny examples when people just because, you know, subscription models are very sexy because they're, you know, so scalable and whatnot, and then you try to make things subscribable, which are not subscribable by the pattern of how that is going to be used. And most likely it's just it's not going to go anywhere. But again, on the opposite to that statement is the scalability consideration. Because if you're building the business, you can definitely look into your potential of scalability. So altogether, like summarizing, I would say look into the business models which provide you bigger scalability, unless the less scalable models are super command high premium, like super tailored services sometimes could be sold at a very high premium as opposed to automated product. If that's the case, fine. But in most occasions, scalability is a good thing to think about, at least not in implement, but to think about. So always consider the most scalable, realistic revenue. Okay, if the pattern of usage is not supporting very scalable one, fine. If the tradition, convenience, for example, pay per item transaction revenue models are dominating, fine. But try to think yourselves what is the most scalable, the things what can realistically work, and definitely test it. Let's talk about that one. But before we go into testing, and happy to take any questions at any time, like in the end or now or whatever in between. Before we go to the testing, let's talk about pricing. So this is a part. The revenue model is one thing, but then again, for developing and hypothesizing and testing of your revenue streams, that the price point is important. So how much to charge? Shall we charge 90 euros a month or 99 euros a month? Shall this, you know, whatever item cost 200 euros or 300 euros? They are, in my world, again, it's a simple world, but in my world, there are 3 key pricing methods. You can price on the cost. So you take your costs, you try, hope and pray that you have calculated them right, and then you add some markup called gross margin or whatever, and that's what your end price. That doesn't matter, either into the channel or to the end user. That's the cost-based price. Then there is market, or sometimes referred to as a competition-based pricing. How much the direct competitors charge, what the market is used to pay, like using that example of, I don't know, bottle of milk. There is a certain traditional expectation what the milk is supposed to cost within a context, right? Having something milk 10 times cheaper or 10 times more expensive is definitely raising eyebrows. Why? So what is the market acceptance? What is the closest the direct competition charging? This is called market-based pricing. And the third one is a value-based pricing. Maybe you can figure out how much the customers are willing to pay. Because if you ask for too little and they would be willing to pay twice as much, bad for you. That's against the sustainability of your business model. You definitely would be surviving better if you charge twice as much, if they would be willing to pay. But of course, you're early and you can't figure out what they are willing to pay, because you don't have anything to offer them. And just asking them, would you pay 100 euros? It is a silly thing, because they are not exactly parted with their money. So they want to be nice and they lie to you, saying, yes, of course I'm going to pay 100 euros. And guess what? They're never paid. And I think you also have seen that one. Okay? Anything? No. Now, one thing I want again emphasize for you guys is this. So what do you think about offering different versions? Moritz asked, what do you think about offering 3 different versions and use specific method to make one of offers stand out? Yeah, that is a next step. How you bundle, how you hint the customers are buying that thing that you're actually willing them to buy. But for now, we can get to that, Moritz. But for now, let's stick to the one product pricing situation, not a product category or product portfolio pricing. But this is exactly how you do it. You sometimes, even if you browse the digital products, you can see this always, the base, and then there is, some sort of a extended, and then the premium, and there's always some sort of a hint visual that, for example, this second cheapest is highlighted as the one to go. This is also done in digital subscription, for example, models. So one thing I want to emphasize, and some of you would immediately disagree to me, but this is kind of, to me, it's quite a thing to think about and consider in your pricing strategies. Never ever price primarily on the costs. Why? And there is an exception, which is a broad one, but still, we get to that. Why? Because your customers don't give a heck how much this one costs to you. First of all, they're unaware of your costs, direct and indirect, and they don't care. Honestly, why? If this is, of course, the cost can, okay, you can adapt, you can adjust it, like the market does adjust accordingly to the cost rise. This is no surprise, but basically, think for a while. Sometimes I see the desperate willingness of some new businesses price on a cost. Why? What's the rationale behind it? Maybe they're going to pay more. Maybe they're going to pay less. Maybe they're going to pay as little, that the costs are, not making your existing or even increasing costs are not making this business feasible whatsoever, viable, for the sake, right? So why the cost is so important? If you're building I would give you another angle to it. If you're building a existing user experience product, in other words, if you have many direct competitors, you will have no chance other than pricing on a market, pricing on your competitors. The more new user experience solution it is, in other words, the more your offering product or service differentiates from the ones on a market, the less direct competitors you're having, the more you can play with the value-based pricing. So trying to figure out how much they're going to pay, because there is no direct comparison, right? There's no direct competition. And that's why you can probably spend some time in figuring out what they're willing to pay. That said, there is one and very large segment. Does anyone ask something, or is the background? Okay, just feel free to stop me and ask me anything. Revenue model related or just startup related. So there is one very, very actually large segment of exceptions, and this is where you have no other way to price otherwise than just on costs. And this is so-called one-off tailored orders. For example, print me those 500 books. You can't, there's all books are different, right? Right. So there is no standard 500 printing price for a book, because book can have, you know, text only, like grayscale visuals, colored visuals, anything. You can't go out and look at the competition the way that you would like to look at the competition of a more kind of homogeneous offering. So you don't have any chance. You have to price on cost. And there is also a book is not that specific and unique that you will go out asking around your customers potential and whatever, what do you think how much you're going to pay for printing a book? So you just say, okay, here's my costs. I hope I included everything. I double or triple, you know, the number, and that's the price I'm going to do the job. And this is not a small thing. This could be also like prepare, you know, this I don't know, one chair for me or something. But this could be very, very massive orders. Also, follow the pattern of a one-off tailored order model. For example, print me this 500,000 of circuit boards in the Shenzhen factory number 63, right? And this again, all the circuit boards are different. It's not one side or do me that and many casings on the mold or whatnot. Those are massive orders, millions eventually, but the logic stays the same. You can't, there's no way how you can actually try to specific order how you can benchmark against the competition unless you run around and ask the quotes from others, but they will know that why you're doing that, right? Or then on the other hand, also it's not so unique user experience that you will spend your time with your customer asking, well, how much she or he is going to pay for it. However, and this is a disclaimer because I'm sometimes misunderstood. I'm misunderstood. I haven't said that you don't need to calculate this cost-based pricing as a health check. Okay, never base your pricing decision except of this one-off type of order on this on the cost primarily, but always, of course, do your cost calculation, because it might appear that the market traditionally or your existing and new customers are not willing to pay even a half of what it costs you to do, and then it's just simply not viable. Okay, good. Now, someone has, it's maybe me, but I think there's a mic somewhere. All right, guys. How to test the revenue models and pricing, and also the way either it's subscription or it's you know, pay per use or something. The not the easiest, but the most accurate, of course, is by selling. If you start selling something or pre-selling, you might not have it yet. You can factor in the waiting time, but basically go for products and services. You can try asking your potential customers to pay in advance. This is the most accurate way how you can test it. Because if someone really opens the wallet and says, okay, I'm paying you this much for usage, or I'm paying you that much of for the month or for the year, that's quite a evidence for me that most likely they are okay, still wait until you're shipping or until you launch it. That's good. Someone of you still has, I don't know how it works, has the mic on, because I don't see that immediately anyone has a mic on. what they call it. It's maybe other source, maybe it's Louis, but maybe not. Okay, because he's kind of muted. Okay, so the next best thing is mock sell. So you basically initiate, for example, the purchase process on your website. It's like 99, buy now. Someone pushes the buy now button, and then it's a pop-up comes. Okay, sorry, we're out of the stock, or something like that. You kind of simulate the sale. It's not that evident as the pre-sale because lots of people just are checking the shipment expenses and whatnot, and they would never assume to finish the purchase anyway. But it's already something. It's already something that the people interact with the information, which could be a bit of much vaguer, but kind of a hint that you're going in terms of the model and price point, you're going in the right direction. But sometimes you're very early, you're still exploring, you're still doing customer discovery, right? And maybe early customer validation. And then it's a very difficult to figure out, especially if you're building new user experience products, something like you don't have direct competition, and you would like to know, because if the willingness of the market to pay is not there, you better stop building it. Why you should bother and do something better in your life. Okay. So sometimes you're very curious relatively early on, figuring out how much they're going to pay. This is a super disclaimer. This is a super weak evidence, but often useful to start to think about the ballpark, about something that you can start them interacting with. Is it pre-sale, mock sale, or something? Big idea. When you are in exploration phase, when you talk to your customers, do some surveys, whatever you're doing there, test the revenue model and pricing only with those ones who have shown at least some interest in your solution. If in a survey or out of the interview, it's clearly that they don't consider your solution, your product or service being of any value to them. They're not your customers, in other words. Don't ask the question about the price. Why? Common sense. Because if they're not your customers, you should not care how much they think is a lot or a little or whatnot. You're interested only in those who are basically stopping you with a question, as I'm ironically saying, stopping sometimes you with a question. Okay, when it is going to be launched? Where can I buy it? And then it's a great question asking, okay, what do you think of price and revenue? Okay, that's very important. Don't ask that question to all of you. Like you distribute the survey and then you analyzing results, you disregard that, you know, some of them answered not everything else, but then what's the price? And then they go around the price. Now, the silliest way how to ask the price based on the value, like test the price early within your questions, is asking, would you buy for 100 euros? That's the silliest. The second worst is asking how much you would pay. Why it's silly? Because most likely in that phase, there is not sufficiently full user experience possible. It's like early prototype or even nothing, like a story. And many people can have a very different perceptions, and you will get the huge spread back. If you ask how much you're going to pay, someone will say, I don't know, 10 euros, and someone will say 200 euros. And just having an average is not getting you anywhere. So you use this one, which I borrowed from the guy from Boston called Patrick Campbell, guy who knows all ins and outs, who spent all his career in figuring out the pricing models and pricing strategies. And this is so-called the 4-question method. And it suits all the revenue models we discussed earlier, except of this sharing, the percentage models, so-called, and the dynamic pricing, because it's the abstraction level of the one who responds is too high to render a decent answer in that. And you ask those 4 questions, And you actually even can show them because it's kind of important that they are seen all together, so not changing the previous answer. You can do it in survey, you can do it end of the interview, and those 4 questions are these. What's the good price? If they show the interest in your solution, right? And is it like per month, or is it per unit, or per usage, or whatever? What is a suspiciously low price? Because sometimes if your product is so different, so great, and so value adding, then they're definitely, for some products, not all of them will be the price which kind of breaks the story of the greatness. So what's the good price? What's suspiciously low price, if any? What is the price you're not going to pay? Like, definitely. So, and this is the question why you need to make sure that they're interested in your solution. So, okay, I need it, I really want it, but this is I'm not going to pay, okay? That is the setting for the 3rd question. And the 4th one is, what is high, but I'm still buying? So it's not a fair, it's not a good price, but okay, this is the maximum I still can pay, I'm able to pay or willing to pay for the service or product like this, okay? And then if you get like few dozens of answers, it's not that very, actually, I'd say from something like few dozens, even like 25, 30 answers, like 3 answers is too little. These price categories will start to cluster. They will start to start taking some shape of the mountain if you plot them. These beautiful mountains will be only from some 200, 300, like almost like a standard distributions, 300, 200, 300 answers. But already with 30, 35 answers, you'll see some clustering them in some sort of Himalayas, so you can get like peaks or something. And you have those answers here. The one is suspiciously low, fair, high but still buy, and too high. I won't promise like with a couple of tens of answers you will be having so beautiful picture, but you will getting there. With a few hundreds you will have quite similar to what you're seeing. And then that gives you a hint where you can start experimenting with your mock sales or pre-sale campaigns, something that most of them consider between fair and high but still buy. Okay, so what is the benefit of this 4 questions instead of asking how much you're going to pay? Each of those answers puts the other answers in context. Okay, each of those questions and answers hence is kind of putting those things in a context on their own. So having those 4, the one who answers can navigate, can define the worldview on price point and pricing in a much better way. And this is of course for value-based pricing. If you're just building a better solution to existing whatever problem and product, go for market, go for competition pricing, look around for that. All right, it was a pleasure. That was for me for today. The slide deck I will send it to Madara, and she will distribute if she wants to. I hope it kind of belongs to the principle of treating you here, guys. So sad that the most of you did not choose to switch cameras on, but okay, that's life. I can live with that. All right, thank you. I hope it was useful. If not useful, then at least interesting. So if there are questions, I'm super happy. We still have time. Thank you for digital applause. So if there are some questions, I'm happy to take them. Maybe there are, maybe they're not. You're actually roughly 30 people were around all the time. So probably you wasn't that scary, that stuff. Any questions? Yes, Lena?
Not from my side, but thank you very much. It was really interesting.
Welcome. Thank you for having me.
If someone has questions, don't hesitate. You can also write them in chat. From my side, I wanted to remind you about 2 next workshops. The pitching training will be in 2 separate workshops. So the first one will be on 8th of May, and the second one, the pitch tests, will be on 22nd of May. So put those 2 in the calendars, and Mother will also send you the calendar invites.
When you're having your demo day,
On 12th of June,
and what format is it, online or on site?
also online.
Online, okay. There, okay. I'm not going to teach you pitching, but there are tiny little differences in the tactics, how you pitch online and how you pitch on stage. But I hope that will be promptly and properly explained to you. All right, ladies and gentlemen, it was a pleasure, and have a great evening. Thank you.
Thank you. And remember, fill in the survey about the workshop. Mother will share the link on Slack also. Thank you.
Leanne, can you spare
Yeah.
a few minutes with me after everybody leave?
Yes, we can.
Thank you.
I think Mother cannot leave because she's